Welcome to Barnyard Language. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language, honest talk about running farms and raising families.
In case your kids haven't already learned all the swears from being in the barn, it might be a good idea to put on some headphones or turn down the volume. While many of our guests are professionals, they aren't your professionals. If you need personalized advice, consult your people. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Barnyard Language. Thanks for joining us. And before we started recording, Katie said she's tired already. So, Katie, why are you so tired? What's happening in Iowa these days?
Well, I'm working on a very large crochet project for someone for Christmas. It's not any of our listeners, but I'm not going to say who it's for. Anyway, Friday night, after the kids fell asleep and Jim went to bed, I made the mistake of sitting down with a really good audiobook and my crochet. And the next time I thought about it, it was literally 3 o'clock in the morning. And because it was
That's some serious crafting.
Yeah. Because it was a weekend, my kids were, of course, up at 6 a.m. And then with the time change this morning, I'm just dragging a little.
A little bit, yeah. So that is an exciting Friday night in the Palmer household, is what you're saying.
Woo. Yeah, no, it really was, actually. The guys just finished picking corn and started combining. And the deer hunters have been out. Apparently our friend's daughter comes out and hunts with her dad. She's a senior in high school this year. She's been hunting out here for 6 or 7 years, I want to say. Saw a nice buck yesterday morning. Saturday morning. Today is Sunday. Okay. Shot him, and all she found was a tuft of hair. So one of the other neighbors has been watching a nice buck all summer, and the buck got hit by a car the morning they went out to find him. To shoot him. So they did still get the rack. They called the sheriff and got a salvage tag, I think is what it is actually called. So they still got the rack, but they didn't get the fun of killing it themselves. And they didn't get any meat because...
Right, and someone else got the damage on the car.
Yeah, somebody else got to pay for it, so I guess that's good. Yeah, so that's about it.
And how was Halloween in your household? Did people go out? Were people feeling better?
Yes, the boy child stopped puking in time, and my friend Susie, thank you, Susie, came through in an emergency with a costume because he had still been changing his mind as to what he wanted to be, and somehow after a whole weekend of him puking on me, I hadn't really thought about the fact that if he felt better, he would need a costume. So we got a Spider-Man costume borrowed, and we went down the hill to the neighbor's house, and they had called from the Dollar General in town to ask what kind of candy my kids liked, and in the background all I could hear was the neighbor's husband saying they like beef jerky and PBR, which would be Pabst Blue Ribbon beer, which I assume he was thinking would be for us. So they spent probably $10 at Dollar Tree, and my kids lucked out with like whole bags of goldfish crackers and big bags of candy. And then we went trick-or-treating around 5 houses, maybe. It snowed that morning, so... And then we went up to the grandparents, so they probably got more candy than they would have if we had actually, like, really gone trick-or-treating.
Yeah, sometimes a few strategic houses is just as good as a whole bunch.
Yeah. And thankfully, in a real moment of genius, their teachers said no costumes at school, which I really deeply appreciate, because I don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with it. Nobody wants to deal with it. And,
and then no one has to make that emergency trip back to the school to pick up the piece of the costume that got forgotten that day.
And nobody has to deal with the kindergartner who can't get...
the sadness over something getting ripped or destroyed.
Yeah, and nobody has to deal with the kid who can't get out of their costume to go potty or back in their costume by themselves, or that gets face paint in their eyes or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
Everybody's happier this way. And I would imagine that with the diversity in town. There's probably quite a few students who do not, I don't want to say celebrate Halloween, but who do not observe it. And, it's easier to just not.
Sure, yeah.
So, how are things at your place, Arlene?
Yeah.
Yep.
Wear orange and black. Things are good. Yeah, we did to Halloween, so the older one is away at school, and number 2 is in high school now, and he has decided that he's too old. Not too old to eat all of the candy that came home, but too old to go trick-or-treating, which is fair. I also eat a lot of the candy that came home. So this was the first year that kids actually went trick-or-treating with friends, which was kind of a new milestone for us. So we don't live all that far from town, and my husband and I ended up having to milk on Halloween night. So number 3 and number 4 both went with different friends into town. And then when we were done milking and got cleaned up and showered, and I threw on a cow costume because it was warm and cozy and it was cold out on Halloween. And I like to dress up too. So we went in and met up with both kids on different streets, grabbed them, and then made a quick tour to the retirement home where my husband's grandmother lives, and then did just a few houses on our street. And I think they probably got as much on our road as they did in their time in town. But there was a lot of treats. But that's fine. That's what it's about. And everyone had a good night. Although my youngest was complaining about sore legs by the end. So I guess he had met his limit in terms of walking around town. And since then, we've been working on, it's not quite a spreadsheet. Katie knows how I love spreadsheets, but we have a whole schedule for this coming week because it's Royal Winter Fair week. And so different people need to be in different places, including my husband and myself. And we have people that work for us, and their daughter is in 4-H, and our daughter's in 4-H. And so we're trying to figure out how to get as many people to Toronto to actually go watch the kids' show. And then later on in the week is the National Holstein Show, which we, for the first time, have some heifers showing in. So it's an exciting week for everybody, but the work still needs to get done. So we have a whole schedule of kid care and who's doing chores and all that kind of stuff. And then, as Katie said, today's Sunday. I'm supposed to leave tomorrow morning right after I'm done milking. And the youngest has pink eye. So that's just something that wasn't on the spreadsheet, but we're working it out. I think he'll probably only have to miss a day of school as long as I can get those drops into his eyes over the course of today, and maybe one more shot tomorrow morning. And my father-in-law is going to watch him and also watch the 4-H show on the live stream at the same time tomorrow morning, because my mother-in-law was going to get them on the bus, but then she had other plans in the morning. So it's all going to work out. But I just love how in parenting and farming, just when you think everything is organized, that something comes along to let you know that you're not in control.
I was going to say you could just threaten him with treating pink eye the way we do in cattle, with a shot into the eye and then an eye patch glued to his face for a week. See how that goes over, if he's resisting the drops. I think the spreadsheet needing is part of the drive behind doing the podcast for me too, because, other folks, even just having kids is enough complication to doing things with your life. But when other folks are talking about, getting somebody to feed their cat, and we're like, yeah, that's cute. Like, it is hard to find a cat sitter, don't get me wrong. But when you're talking about, 100 cows who need to be dealt with for hours a day by somebody with skill, that's a whole nother level of things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, plus the kids that are left behind, and all the logistics of family and farm life are a whole different level for sure. So if you're following our social media this week, stay tuned for updates from the Royal Winter Fair. And if you're going to be in Toronto, come say hi. I guess our episode will be coming out on Thursday, so it'll be mostly over. But if you're there on Friday and you happen to listen, you can come say hi.
Well, and Arlene, I saw that your family is now spokesmodeling for a company there on the Facebooks, so that was exciting. It was more exciting before I realized that it was a semen company. That kind of a little awkward, but But that is a lovely picture of your daughter and your husband.
Not technically models, yeah, but a friend of ours who's a photographer submitted a picture of my daughter and my husband from the Royal last year. So CMX used it in one of their ads this week, so that was pretty cool.
It is a very nice photo.
Add that to me being on the cover of Progressive Dairy, and we're basically famous. Yeah, cover girls all around.
I was just glad that this week I went to a class and someone asked if I was okay with having my picture taken before they did it to put on social media for the company, which was really, really appreciated to be given the opportunity to say, no, I'd rather not. And they went and picked people who were happy to have their picture taken, which made everybody happy. So, as someone who doesn't like being photographed, I appreciate that.
Yes, that's true. It's nice to be given the option.
It's always better to give people choices. Unless it's your kids, then you probably shouldn't.
Yes, that's a good point. All right, should we introduce our guest for the week?
I suppose so.
Raven, we start each of our interviews with the same question, and this is a way for you to introduce yourself to our listeners and to us. So we always ask, what are you growing? So for farmers, that's crops and livestock, but it also can be kids and careers and businesses and all kinds of other stuff. So Raven, what are you growing?
What am I growing? I'm growing 2 small toddler boys, a bunch of free-range chickens, a colony of cats, and then an assortment of vegetables, eggplants, pumpkins, um, olena, which is turmeric. That's a Hawaiian word for it. What else do I have growing? Lots of tomatoes, carrots, green beans, guava trees, orange trees, ulu trees, which is breadfruit, mangoes, limes, all types of citrus, all kinds of things we have growing over here.
And what ages are the little people in your house?
So my youngest Hapu'u is gonna be 2 in December, and my oldest Ha'akea will be 4 in December.
Wow, they're really little people. And for our listeners, we're recording at Raven's time at 4 a.m. because she wanted to do it when it was quiet. So she gets extra stars for getting up early to talk to us. So Katie and I are both people who live in cold climates, and I've never been to Hawaii. I don't know if Katie has, but are you able to grow everything all year? Do you kind of have seasonality still, or what does it look like in terms of like planting and growing things where there's no real winter?
It depends. So every Hawaiian island, but especially Maui, there are like, gosh, I can't remember the exact amount. I think like 12 or so, like mini subclimates. So depending on which part of the island you're on, it's a different climate. Typically you can grow almost anything year round. If you're higher elevation, so if you're like up in Kula, like up on Haleakala, I don't know if you guys kind of, if you want to look like at a map of Maui after, so it makes more sense. But um it's what we call upcountry, but up on Haleakala, up in the mountain in the higher elevation, they can grow a lot more like herbs and lettuces and things like that because it's cooler climate up there, typically all year round. Where I am, I'm closer to the sea level, like I can see the ocean from my porch. So like I have some dill growing right now, it's dying, it's not liking it. Some different herbs just don't do well. But pretty much anything you can grow year round because it is close to summer. From I would say October to January is more of our rainy season. So we do get a little bit more rain during that season, so I can kind of get away with growing some different herbs. But pretty much anything will grow year round.
Much different than Ontario and Iowa, right, Katie?
I have a lime tree, Arlene.
Okay, yeah, in your
It's-
house.
Oh, well, no, it's out in the front yard right now. I mean, it's the very
Yeah.
beginning of September as we're recording this, and it was 43 degrees Fahrenheit last night, so I'll be bringing it in as soon as I rig up enough supplementary light bulbs to keep it happy. Because I tried a lime tree before, and it died very quickly from the lack of light in Iowa in the winter. It just kind of went very sad. But, yeah, no limes, no turmeric, no breadfruit, no coffee, no pineapples, no nothing. Really. Cats. We have cats. And we have chickens.
Yeah.
So we have that in common. So where did you grow up, and how did you end up at this place in your life with the farming and the kids and Uh, how did you get to here? Give us a rundown of the last however many years.
Yeah, so I was originally born on the island of Oahu, in Kahului, which is kind of like the country part of Oahu. And then when I was a toddler, I moved to California, which is where my mom is originally from. My parents got divorced, and then when I was 14, almost 15, I moved to Maui. So almost half my life, because I'm 28, I'll be 29 in a few months, I've lived on Maui. Um, but I definitely come from a background of farming. So my dad's side of the family is from New Mexico. They've been ranchers, the Spanish part and then the indigenous part. Obviously, go far enough back in anyone's ancestry, you'll find people that were farming because that's how you survive growing food. Um, and then even on my mom's side, my grandpa was a dairy farmer, so there's a lot of farming in my history. And then my other half, his family, they raise pigs. So their last name is Puukea, which means pig. And it got changed to that because they were pig farmers. And then his family also, like many families in Hawaii, were kalu farmers. So taro, which is the starchy the if you've ever gone to, like, a luau, they have that purple stuff they talk about poi. So they grew that. So we have some of that growing in our backyard too, some kalo. And that's actually my son Ho'akea is named after a variety of kalo, so it's a white variety. So it actually comes in different colors, but the most popular colors that you see is purple. But it comes in any color from white, which is a Ho'akea, to, like, a golden yellow, purple, gray color. It comes in a few different colors. Um, so yeah, I've always loved farming and growing stuff, and my other half as well grew up that way. So when we started dating and then I moved in with him on his family's land, it kind of was just they were always planting stuff. So we both just have that in common, and our kids really love to be outside eating dirt, planting stuff, or pretending to help planting stuff. And then I really wanted to be able to quit my job and stay home with the kids. So that's why I had started Puukea Farm. The last half of both of my children's names put together. Um, and then, yeah, it's kind of just grown from there, social media a little bit. And that's how I got here to where I am today.
I like Arlene. I feel like the Raven is the language that is spoken indigenously in Hawaii is called Hawaiian. Is that correct? Or is there?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's another word for it when you're not speaking English. It's not that early here, but I'm obviously not quite awake yet.
Yeah, so Olelo Hawaii is the Hawaiian language. But with most people that are born and raised in Hawaii will speak Pidgin, which comes from back in the day when they had the plantations and there were, like Chinese, Korean, Filipino, Hawaiian, Portuguese, Japanese, Puerto Rican, everything mixed together. They couldn't communicate, and so that's how Pidgin has a mix of everyone's language all together. So that's what most people in Hawaii will speak Pidgin.
I was just thinking about what an advantage that is for naming your kids after crops, because I was thinking, Arlene, what it would be like if we had named our kids after our local crops that I would have,
Corn.
number 2 Dent and Berkshire, Yorkshire, Hamp. I guess it's like it doesn't sound as poetic as it does in a different language. So there's definitely
Yes.
an advantage.
So, yeah, when it comes to your farm, Raven, are you at this point doing farmers markets or direct marketing, or is it more about feeding your family and kind of replacing your non-farm income and sustaining your family that way? What does it look like for the farm aspect of?
Yeah, kind of all of that. So I do sell produce on Maui Hub, which is a local online farmers market that we have here on Maui, that they started during COVID to really kind of boost our local economy. Because most businesses unfortunately rely directly on tourism, which, you've seen recently with the fires and stuff, it really has affected everybody if there aren't any tourists. And even during COVID, it was really affecting people. So it was born in 2020. But it's really cool. So you go on there, they do all the marketing for you, which is really nice within the community. You every Friday list what you have available. The market opens online Saturday, I think like 12 p.m. And then it closes Monday night, 11:59 p.m. Everyone puts their orders in. You get emailed a list of what you need to go harvest, and then you drop it off and they distribute it for you. And then they send you either a check or a direct deposit. So it's really streamlined. It makes it a lot easier. But we definitely eat a lot of what we grow as well. You'll see my oldest running through the yard just picking tomatoes, picking cherries off the cherry tree, all kinds of things like that. We definitely have been trying to eat more of the ulu, which is the breadfruit. So we've been trying to steam it. I've made ulu au gratin. So it's really similar to like a potato. It's a starchy um kind of I guess it's a fruit, grows on a tree. But yeah, so we definitely eat a lot of what we grow. Our kids like to help themselves to it and then selling it and definitely kind of trying to replace my income with the money from that.
Yeah, that's a really neat business model because then you don't have that like bringing a whole bunch of stuff to a market and then hoping it sells, right? Like and then
Mhm.
you can pick based on what your sales are too. That's a really interesting way of doing things.
I know we have an Iowa food hub that we've participated in here, and it is a really nice model, especially for being able to sell direct to consumer and to restaurants and to wholesalers like
Mhm.
that, because you're not driving from here to here to here and dealing with somebody who wants 1 pound and somebody who wants 20 pounds. And, it really,
Mhm.
one drop off and one check does make it really nice. I know one of the things that first attracted us to you was how open you are on social media. And I'm really I say this as somebody who also is. How do you balance being exactly yourself with making direct market sales? Because there is always that kind of, um, at least a little bit taking into consideration what you say, uh, knowing that you depend on these people for your money. And even if you decide to say to hell with them and say what you were going to say anyway, I think we generally think about it. Sometimes we think about it before we say it.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a filter to an extent. That's a good question. I like a 10% out of 100% filter, I guess I would say. That's just how I am. I've always been that way. Um, I don't I personally only one person had made a comment about, "Oh, I won't purchase from you." They've never even bought from me before. Um, when we're talking about kind of some of the stuff with the fire because Oprah, a lot of people don't know, but she owns a lot of land here on Maui. She's not the most ethical person. A lot of people don't like her. A lot of people think it's a race thing. Here in Hawaii, no one could care less the color of her skin. It's more that she owns so much land. In the past, when we've had fires, she has a private road. She doesn't like to open it up to the county to help people evacuate, things like that. So a lot of people have kind of like a bad taste in their mouth about her. And so there was a post about her. She has helped out significantly now since the fire started, but when it first started, it was really just her, like, with a camera crew trying to go to one of the first, shelters, and I kinda just didn't sit well with people, so I kinda made a comment about it on one of the local, um, pages here in Hawaii on Instagram, and someone commented back, "Oh, well, I'll never be purchasing from you again." And I said, "That's fine because I intend to donate most of everything I grow right now, to help feed everyone in the community." And yeah, that was really only bad comment I've ever gotten. I mean, potentially, maybe there's people that have seen my content and be like, I don't want to buy produce from her. I don't think so, really. A lot of the people that buy produce from Maui Hub, I don't think most of them are on social media because I didn't get like a lot of new followers or any messages or comments or anything like that when I started selling on Maui Hub. And there's also like a lot of elderly people that buy produce on there that get like vouchers from different programs from like the county and state and things like that. So I guess the short answer is I haven't really seen it affect anything. I mean, it could potentially, and I'm just not aware of it. But I'd rather be authentically myself than not be myself and, make money from being fake. It just doesn't really sit right with me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make a lot of
It
sense.
does, as someone who did farmers market for years too, it seems like the person complaining is always the one who like spent $6 one time 3 years ago and was such a pain in the ass with even that sale that you're like, No, it's fine. It's totally fine if you don't come back. That's okay. Like, won't hurt my feelings too badly.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a couple of times already the fires in Maui, and I know that being in a community where something is happening is completely different than what we see on the news. And, we probably saw snippets, but really have no idea what it was like living there. So are you willing to talk a bit about what it was like living in the community that was affected by those fires and what happened in that time?
Yeah, I don't know that. I mean, of course, so the geography of Maui, where I live is like the back way to go out to Lahaina. So Maui is, I don't know if I can like draw a shape for you, but basically it has like this curve um at one end of it. So you go into Lahaina. Uh People like to think the whole west side as Lahaina, but Lahaina is a town on the west side of Maui. So you go in that way and you come back around the back way, which I don't recommend unless you've driven that road because it's really one lane. There's a lot of straightways. There's no guardrails going off the cliff. People do go off sometimes. But if you went all the way back around the back way and came out through like central Maui, I live like closer to the back way, but not all the way in the back, if that makes sense. So we weren't directly affected by the fires. But we do know a lot of people that were affected. I don't want to cry, but of course, as a mom, like when you see that there were like children that didn't make it, that didn't survive. I've seen some videos. We have a friend who was working with his company. They're out there in Lahaina, so they took some video. There were definitely some charred bodies in cars, babies in car seats. Um, that part is really, really hard as a mom. But yeah, also living in a small community, it definitely just affects you. I used to work in Kaanapali, so on the west side. So a lot of people that I know, there was a fire in 2018. It took out a few houses. It almost took out a bunch of houses of people that I knew, but it didn't. That almost made it worse this time because they did lose their houses. So they had that scare in 2018 that almost lost their houses. My coworker had told me, "Oh, I was in the yard with my water hose, watering everything. I didn't want to lose my house. I didn't want to lose my house." And I know this time that she did lose her house. So that's hard when you know everyone. And then also we have like extended family that live on that side, friends, cousins, things like that that lost their houses. Hawaii's a small place, but Maui's an even smaller place. So it definitely affects you to see that happen. Um, I don't know if you have any like what's the word I'm looking for? Like direct questions about different aspects of it. You can ask me. I'll do my best not to cry, but it is very emotional. Because it's just like I don't know what you guys see on your social media, but here in Hawaii, like there's special different pages, like news pages, that you can see, and there's a lot of content on there, that's coming directly from people here in Maui, and it's really, really hard to see, like even the aerial views, the drone views of how like a whole entire town burnt down. And I had family that lived in Paradise during the Paradise Fire, and their whole town burnt down and they lost their house. It was just different because they had a little bit more notice. There were more evacuation routes. Lahaina, there's really one lane in and one lane out. And then there were some roadblocks because of down power lines. So that, added another complication to the whole aspect. So there's a lot of people that had to leave their cars and get out and go in the water. A lot of people that didn't get out, unfortunately. And then some people just ran to get away from it. My old boss used to work for a restaurant that had a location in Kiev, but their location in Lahaina burnt down. I went to school with her children. One of her sons was stuck in the roadblock on Front Street with his family, so they just got out of the car and left it and ran down the street. And that's the only reason they're alive. And we're hearing so many stories about things like that, about people that we know too. So it just hits a little bit different. It's not just like, oh, this happened somewhere that's so horrible. I can't imagine. Like you can imagine when it happens in your community and it's people that and they're telling you these stories. It's unbelievable, even though it is believable at the same time.
What are people saying when it comes to what went wrong and why there wasn't more warning and more time for people to get out? What is kind of I mean, and sometimes there's a difference between the official story and what people actually think is true. But what are some of the stories out there about what went wrong?
Yeah, so there's a lot of conspiracies going on. Some of them are true,
Sure.
some of them aren't. Um, so my other half had just started working for the water department for the county. That day they were out there, and I remember he was texting me, "It's so windy that the shingles off of people's roofs are flying off." Like, he's texting me all day long, like the road's covered in like tar paper because the roofs are flying off. So it was really, really, really windy. Ultimately, there was a power line that went down. It's dry on that side. All the water gets diverted for, a few companies, big interest companies. Because historically, Lahaina is a wetland. Excuse me. It hasn't been a wetland for quite some time since the plantations when they first started diverting the water, but now everything is dry. So it just sparked a fire, and then I think it was just poor management and not enough communication. Also, we're on a small island, so the infrastructure just isn't set up for things like that. Things like that don't happen here. So I think it was just no one was prepared. There wasn't good communication, and then it was just a cascade of effects after that. And even after the initial fire happened, there still wasn't a lot of good communication because the power lines were down, the cell service was out, no one could communicate really well. And then it just, it was a snowball effect and just kind of evolved from there.
I think, too, as someone from the
Mhm.
Midwest, the concept of not having anywhere to run from something like that. I mean, we have tornadoes. So you go in your basement or you go out in your front yard and you watch it, because that's who we are. But, occasionally people get killed, but it's one person or two people. And, not that it's not still tragic for those people, but it's not a large-scale disaster. And maybe it flattens some houses, but it's like a mile long and 50 feet wide that the path of destruction is, or we have flooding, but it's not that bad. It tends to be river bottoms. It's not. And I know for myself, and I feel like this might be a universal truth for parents, that once you have kids, all kids are your kids. And not that I'm not going to say it's not still tragic and horrible and horrifying when adults die, but little ones, and especially little ones who are too small to have any chance, it is that much more heartbreaking. And so the idea of people in such a small town being trapped like that is terrifying. And I think, too, with things like tornadoes, I mean, they happen very quickly, but they're over very quickly. It is a couple minutes and it's done. And maybe things are flattened, but there's not more coming. There's not ash. There's not hot spots. There's not, it's done. And then you can just clean up. And I think fire just hits very different at that point. And I was reading a really interesting article last night about how much very intentional misinformation is coming out of China into American social media, basically to use this tragedy to distract people from other things that are happening by just feeding this misinformation into social media and getting people worried about that the government did it on purpose as some, weather control plan. And that they're intentionally feeding this out there, and the idea that they're intentionally using a tragedy like this to distract us from whatever they're distracting us from is just mind-blowing. And I think it's really interesting to me to see what sorts of natural disasters each area has shapes how that area relates to things, I guess, because I mean, we have tornadoes, blizzards, and floods, and that's really it. And it's a very different response to these things that fires and earthquakes and whatever they have in Canada. Lack of poutine, horrible curling accidents. I don't know what they have in Canada.
Horrible curling accidents, yeah.
Probably. But I guess
probably pretty similar to the Midwest in terms of
Yeah.
natural disasters. Add in some forest fires depending where you live. Not specifically where I am. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the fires you folks
Yeah.
have had recently look really, really scary as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, it's not so much in the communities that I live in, but yeah, especially in mountain areas. But it sounds similar, right? Where you've got limited transportation routes and communication networks are already fragile because of isolation and those types of things. It does make it really hard. Except at least being land based, if you can get people out fast enough, there's not a barrier there, right?
Mhm.
Like I mean, the footage of people going
Yeah.
into the ocean to avoid the smoke and the flames is pretty terrible.
Raven, I imagine as well that being a small town, is most of your emergency response also volunteer?
I mean, not necessarily. There is a good amount of volunteer firefighters and things like that. That we definitely have a fire department. Every city has their own station, I want to say. So like Maui, the county of Maui is the island of Maui, the island of Lanai, and Molokai. But we're three separate islands. So I know that they had people that I think, after everything kind of happened, shipped in from some of the outer islands. I think we even had some people coming in from the mainland to help out. But there is a fire department that is like designated for each section of Maui, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think about, in our area, like, our closest town of like 10,000 people has one full-time firefighter. And like they have a station, they are fully staffed, but it's all volunteer. And, comparing that level of preparation and readiness to someplace like New York City, where there's people whose entire career and there's multiple big fire stations like that, and just what the response must be like, and especially when their families are being threatened.
Mhm.
They're not coming in from somewhere else. It's their homes and their families, and that it's just that much scarier to think about.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of our firemen did lose their homes as well. One of my friends, her other half, the fireman, his house burnt down, and a lot of other firemen lost their own homes. So their houses were burning down while they were fighting the fire to try to protect other people's houses. So it's another aspect where it just hits a lot closer to home.
So looping back to the agriculture aspect of, I mean, that's kind of where one of the ways that we look at things. So how has that affected the farming community on Maui, and food distribution and those types of things, and the infrastructure that people need to get the food that they need to eat? Because I'm assuming that, as much as possible, people are eating things from the islands rather than importing food from other places, because it would be a lot more expensive.
Yeah, I mean, a good portion of food is still imported, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because we have the land to grow it. We have the amazing climate, amazing soil that's super fertile from the volcano, everything like that. But a lot of food is still imported. But it's definitely affected agriculture. So there wasn't just the Lahaina fire. At the same time, there was a fire going on up country, which, like I had previously mentioned, is where a lot of stuff is grown as well because it's a colder climate, higher elevation. So up in Olinda, which is kind of like up above Makawao, where I had lived for quite a while. So that hit home for me, was on fire. They have a lot of eucalyptus trees up there. And so the roots also have oil. So they kept having flare ups. And with all the focus on Lahaina, it was really the residents that were out there kind of protecting their own land and firefighting themselves, which was really crazy. Um, but Kula also had a fire as well. That's where they grow a lot of stuff. So it's definitely affected the whole island, I would say. Um, the farmers that There were farms that were affected in West Maui, but also the farms that had accounts in West Maui have been affected because restaurants aren't open. Hotels are open, but they're housing residents right now. They're not open for business. So those restaurants aren't open at the hotels. So that was a big hit. Maui Hub is just so awesome and so community based that they took on a bunch of new, just farms, and last week it hit like a record high for how much orders they had. So that's good. So there's still a loss in income. There's different funds set up where farmers can apply to get some assistance, but it's nice to see that a lot of those farmers were able to be added on to Maui Hub. The community was still able to purchase food from them, And at the same time, Maui Hub gave out vouchers as well for anyone affected by the fire. So a lot of people are still able to get local produce. But yeah, there was a lot of wind destruction, especially up in Kula where it affected crops, and the wind is like going 70 miles an hour. It's ripping small, plants out of the ground. And then also the fire damage. A lot of people lost like greenhouses and things like that. Um, and then also up in Olinda, some people lost, like half their pasture. I know one farm family that lost their bees. Unfortunately, they just couldn't get out there because there's also the water issue. The water tanks weren't full. This family, the only reason she was telling me that they were able to um really kind of protect their land is because they had their own water tank. And that's what they were out there using to kind of fight the fire. So yeah, it definitely affected agriculture in that way, in the sense that people have lost a lot of accounts. So that's lost income, and also just the actual physical damage to their farms has created a loss in income as well.
Yeah, there's just so many different ways it affects people in the days after, but then it's that those long lasting effects too, right? So are there things that we can be doing to support the people of Maui, and what kinds of rebuilding and healing projects are happening that maybe listeners could support or that we should know about or even follow on social media and give more voice to?
Yeah, I mean, I know that something that has been proposed is to shop local for Christmas and holidays. I can kind of share some pages with you folks afterwards. But there's definitely a lot of small shops here on Maui that are small businesses that are locally owned, especially the ones that are Kanaka owned, so owned by Native Hawaiians. Need a lot of support as well. So that's one way if you are like, what can I order someone for Christmas? Oh, well, they would love something handmade in Maui because who wouldn't? It's a huge selling point. That's one way you can assist. There's also on Instagram, there's the Lahaina family Venmo page. And so all these people have been vetted and their Venmos are up on this page. They post new families every day and you can just scan it and pick a family to donate to. Um, because it's going to take quite a few years to get everything cleaned up before they can even rebuild, because the way everything burnt, the soil and everything is so toxic. They're still looking, unfortunately, for people that are just kind of ash right now because how hot the fire was. A lot of people are just, their bodies won't be recovered. So that missing person list, I think a lot of us have come to terms with the fact that, after a month, that missing person list, they're not missing. Unfortunately, they're no longer with us. So yeah, it's gonna take a few years to get the land cleaned before they can even start to rebuild. So a lot of families are gonna need assistance, for quite some time. They keep saying it's gonna be a marathon, not a sprint. So yeah, if you wanted to donate to families, their Venmo pages are up. I can share those pages with you folks. There's, the big verified foundations, but that money doesn't get out right away to people. People are in desperate need of money right now for different things. Like there's a huge backlog with like the food stamps department right now. It's already such a small department. It's already always backlogged, but now to have all these families that have no income, there is unemployment, but that's a whole nother thing that's backlogged as well for these families. Um, so needing assistance right now. I know that you can always order off of the Amazon. There's some, I'll send you guys all the links for everything, but there's a few different pages where you can just order on Amazon and have it sent there and they'll distribute it out. There's a few different foundations that do that, nonprofits. Because there is a lot of children affected. So a lot of the big things that are needed are like diapers, wipes, formula, baby food, things like that is a big thing. Also being a mom, that hits closer to home when there's so many children affected. But yeah, and also I would say another way that you can support Maui is doing some research on the history of Hawaii. A lot of people don't know the history, or unfortunately, a lot of people kind of fantasize about Hawaii. Like, oh, I watched the Brady Bunch growing up. This is what I think Hawaii is, and it's not really accurately portrayed, I would say, in movies and film and things like that. So I feel like doing some research on the history of Hawaii really helps out a lot as well to get a full picture of everything, because I don't think everyone really understands how everything kind of plays in, if you don't have all the information available to you.
Arlene, I see here, I pulled up the MauiHub.org page as well, and they have a option to donate directly to families to purchase food from the hub,
Mhm.
which seems like a great way to support farmers and families. So we'll link that as well. Because, yeah, another thought on an island is that, here, I mean, if our hay fields burn up, we can bring hay from another place, or we can bring lumber from another place easily. I mean, it might be hard to get, but the transporting it to an island in the middle of an ocean is a very different demand than Iowa or Ontario. I mean, we're kind of out in the sticks, but we're not remote in the same way that an island in the middle of an ocean is.
We've
have an
got major
interstate
highways
that
running
Yes.
by.
cross country pretty
Yeah.
easily, where you guys are definitely in a whole different situation. As far as, am I correct in thinking that your area is pretty dependent on tourism as well?
It is. I say unfortunately, because obviously when something like this happens and there is, just an automatic halt in tourism, it severely affects people. Yeah, it's hard. It's kind of like a catch-50. Unfortunately, the way our infrastructure is set up, and the way that, some of the big plantation owner families that helped with the facilitation of the illegal occupation of Hawaii kind of set it up where we're dependent on tourism. Like, they set it up where we need tourism, which I feel certain ways about working in tourism because I've seen it firsthand. I'm not opposed to tourism, but it could be set up better where we're not in such a need for it, where we have to rely on it. Because there are not some natural resources here in Hawaii, and the fact that we could be exporting way more than we import, because we have the wonderful climate where we can grow almost anything year round, the really fertile soil, the land mass to be growing stuff. It's just not something that's on everybody's mind, unfortunately. But yeah, we definitely rely on tourism a lot more than maybe we should. We should diversify a little bit, I personally think, but I don't know if we will. Even after this, I don't know if that's on people's minds yet.
It's interesting because especially right now, I mean, it seems like when such a large part of your money comes from something where very specifically I'm guessing that having lots more people show up is going to be about the least helpful possible thing at this point. To be like, hey, what'd be great is if a whole bunch of randos showed up. I mean, we're having a hard time supporting the people who live here, but why don't the rest of you come too? That'll be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Arlene, what I'm hearing is that we need to plan for like 2 years down the road and prepay now, but we're just going to go to Raven's house. I hope that's cool, Raven. We'll send you some money now so that we can come in 2 years and stay in your yard. That sounds fun.
Come stay in my yard.
That sounds more fun than staying in a hotel.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned about people learning more about Hawaiian culture and history. And if someone is traveling to Hawaii, not right now, but are there ways that you think that we can be more ethical tourists and actually find ways if Hawaii is back rather than just taking more
Yeah.
is on your bucket list and somewhere you've always wanted to go? Are there ways to do that you feel are good for the community and give?
Yeah, I think being from Hawaii, I'm not native Hawaiian. My other half is, but I was born in Hawaii. I think just being born in Hawaii, we have such a pride for our home. It's such a unique place that I think the rest of the world has such a hard time really wrapping their head around. Because we're so culturally diverse. We refer to Hawaii as the melting pot of the Pacific because it truly is, especially from having the plantations. There are just so many different cultures, and we have our own way of doing things. Technically we're a nation within a nation, which people don't like to acknowledge. So it's different here. It really, really is. It's a culture shock when you're coming from other places. Um, there's just a lot of different influences going on here. A lot of people, like I said, they fantasize Hawaii and what they want Hawaii to be or what they think Hawaii should be, and it's most of the time not accurate. People come with a lot of entitlement. Some of the comments that we hear, especially that I've heard working in tourism, are just, you can't even believe it. It's so outrageous. You're like, what? Who raised these people? There's definitely a lot of tourists though that come that are amazing. That's one of the awesome things about living in Hawaii is you meet all kinds of people. You can make really awesome connections. It's such a small place. Like you'll be so surprised the connections that you can make here that from this person that knows that person, like because it's such a small, special place. But yeah, definitely coming without that sense of entitlement. I think you should come with an open heart and have respect, but also doing the research to understand the bigger picture about Hawaii. Because there's so much different things going on. There's a lot of injustices, unfortunately, that go along here. The stem back to the plantations, stems back to the overthrow of Hawaii. We didn't just happily become a state. That's not how it works. So I think kind of understanding that, yeah, people work in tourism, they might make a lot of money working in tourism, but the cost of living is also super high that it kind of just flattens out. Um, a lot of people have multiple, and this was something that you saw in the Lahaina fires too. A lot of people had multiple um, generations living in one home. So that was another reason, like, you're like, oh, you lost your house, you probably have a family member's house to go to. Well, some people had 4 different generations living in one home and they lost everything. So that's something to think about that's also still very normal here. Like where we live on family land, I have me and my other half are children, a sibling, in-laws, all kinds of people like live together. That's very, very normal and culturally normal for us. Lost my train of thought. But yeah. Also, I think that if you're trying to be ethical, a lot of people come to Hawaii with how can I save as much money as possible? I think people need to understand it's expensive here. That's not possible. Maui in particular is the most expensive island, they say in the world. So it's a very, very expensive. If you can't afford to come, I don't think you should just come anyways. I think you should really plan it out and be strategic about it and intend to buy local. Most of the time when you're buying local produce, you actually save money. This is a crazy concept, but you save money. And that money stays here in our local economy. Like I know, for example, like when someone buys my produce, like that might buy diapers, that might buy milk for the week. We don't have dairy cows. That might, buy my children's haircuts or a pair of clothes or a pair of shoes, something like that. It really stays here in the economy. And it really benefits everybody. But yeah, coming with that sense of respect and an open heart and not thinking that we owe you aloha. I know a lot of people think that it's definitely given freely. But I've definitely, I don't know, maybe I'm just jaded from my time working in tourism. I've worked from rental cars to hotel to recently I worked in property management. That was really the worst though, when I was talking to people over the phone in reservations. And I don't know if COVID, obviously, I feel like it has played a role in people just acting crazy. But I've been told some really crazy things over the phone that you just wouldn't believe. And I don't know where it comes from. I think it's a, combination of everything, to be honest. But yeah, just coming with an open heart, being respectful, and then, yeah, doing the thorough research of where you're staying, like it's hard to pronounce some of the words, but once you get the vowels down, it's actually really easy. And like wanting to pronounce them properly, like there's some people that don't even try, or it feels like they purposely mispronounce things. We're very, very prideful here in Hawaii, so it definitely hurts feelings sometimes. But yeah, if you have any more specific questions, because now I've just lost my train of thought.
Oh, those are some really good points. Yeah, I mean, even just, respecting the place where you're going is a huge step, right? And not making fun of something because you can't pronounce it, but asking for clarification or saying, like, I don't know how to say this, but can you teach me? Letting the people who you're meeting actually teach you something rather than just assuming that they're there to provide you with the ultimate vacation and then you can go back home again.
I know Arlene, obviously, I don't know what the Canadian feelings towards Hawaii might be, if you have opinions about Hawaii, but it feels like in the US, we take a pretty, if we were able to conquer you, you belong to us now and you have to be nice to us. And that we
Mhm.
generally treat Hawaii as a big version of Disneyland anyway, that nobody really lives there and anybody who lives there basically is like Mickey Mouse, that they live there so that we can visit and go to luau's and go surfing, and that they don't have their own lives and their own families and their own concerns, and that they're super stoked for all of us pasty white people who can't pronounce anything to come and run around in ill-fitting bikinis and be rude. And I have the feeling that that is not true. Um, you know, and yeah, it's it can be hard to remember that it is somebody's home, and that you can make fun of yourself for being unable to pronounce it, but you should not be making fun of it being hard to pronounce, because that's on you for not being able to pronounce it. So, let's talk about our children, something that has never caused us any stress
Yeah, let's go into kid talk.
or cost us any money, or I don't think my kids have ever set on anything on fire, so that's good. They do mispronounce a lot of things, so there's that. One of the reasons we started the podcast was because of the isolation when we first became parents, and still do as farm parents. What was your parenting experience like in early days, and especially, I know you said that you do have a more multi-generational, I don't know if it's your direct household or if you have a bit of a family compound, like our family does, how that was, because I know it can be very strange to be isolated and surrounded by people who would love to tell you how to do stuff at the same time.
Yeah. Hmm. So it is more like a compound. It's just me and my children, my other half in our home. Um, it was definitely still very isolating for me. My mom lives on island, but she's too busy running her cult to be a mom these days. I wish I was joking. I'm sorry.
My whole family was just here for the whole weekend, so
So yeah, my mom is busy with other things with her following that she has, I guess you could say. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't a terribly young mom. I was 25, I think, when I had my first child. That's still young. I mean, people are having kids at like 14 these days, but so I felt old at the same time I didn't, because it's not old. But yeah, I really didn't have a lot of support. So that was pretty hard. At first, I had my first child in December 2019. I was off for 3 months for maternity leave because that's unfortunately what we get. I know in Canada you get a lot longer. And then I went back for about a month, and then COVID happened. So I was off the whole first year with my oldest, which was really, really nice. And I got paid from unemployment to be off. So that was really nice to be able to be paid and stay home with my oldest the whole first year. Um, but it was still, yeah, very isolating. My mother-in-law and I don't see eye to eye on anything. So that was harder because I wanted to cloth a diaper. She took it very personal. I don't know why. We just have very different ways of doing things. And I like to do things a little bit more on the natural side, which was a huge weird thing. I don't know why it is for the older generation, but it is. I wanted to do a home birth. I didn't get to do a home birth. I still did my natural way of doing things. I still had my midwives went with me to the hospital. We just did everything differently. And then, yeah, I cloth diapered, made my own baby food and things like that. Um, with my youngest, I've definitely really stopped being so crazy about stuff. I still try to do more on the natural side of everything if I can. I cloth diapered him like the first month or so, and then I stopped because I had to go back to work. So I didn't continue that with him. But I definitely am like, no colorings, no food dyes, no junk food, natural things. my kids are really fortunate they can go outside and eat a mango off the tree, so that's really nice. They are definitely boys though, and because we live out in a rural area, they're crazy. They're always climbing the trees.
Yeah. Have they ever used the toilet for peeing? Or do they just pee outside all the time?
My youngest hasn't really mastered that yet. My oldest loves to pee outside. He will pee inside, but always has to go outside. Pee off the porch, pee on trees, the grass, wherever. My youngest is naked a lot. So, he'll just like stop in the middle of the grass and he's gonna pee. He hasn't really mastered that yet.
My mother-in-law asked yesterday why the apple trees look so good since we've been in a drought and we haven't been watering them. And I was kind of joking when I told her that it was because our little boy pees on them. But I wasn't totally joking. I'm pretty sure that's part of why they look good. But
How old is your son?
5. Old enough to pee on stuff.
Funny, before everything happened and I stopped working in tourism, there's this family staying in one of the properties, and their kids, I guess, were peeing outside, which to me felt so normal. But the resident manager called us to complain about it at the company, and then I was reading the notes in the reservation, and they're like, "Oh, we're so sorry. We live out in the country. Our kids are just used to that." And everyone in the office is like, "I'm sure you can relate to this." I'm like, "Yes, I can. It's very normal." I still don't think it was weird that they were peeing in the grass, but apparently others were upset by it.
So I feel like this kind of has already been answered, but what are some of the other things that you love about raising your kids on the land and being able to farm with them and raise food with them?
Yeah, I mean, I love that they can be connected to their culture. My 3-year-old is so intelligent. He's also very naughty. One of those kids that have to be very stimulated, or I don't know, they may end up in prison one day. So he has a lot of questions.
I think we're raising very similar children here, Raven. Yeah.
It's just smart for his own good, but he's very interested in how everything works. So I think that's cool. And I think that it's awesome that he can be raised so deeply in his culture. Unfortunately, a lot of people here in Hawaii have kind of disconnected from that. So my children, like, they have Hawaiian first names, an English middle name, and then another Hawaiian middle name. And then their father's 2 last names, because we both have hyphenated last names. Something that you see a lot here in Hawaii is that people will have an English first name and a Hawaiian middle name and go by the Hawaiian middle name, which is because it wasn't fashionable to be Hawaiian. So with that and everything that happened, a lot of people are disconnected from their roots, unfortunately. And it really doesn't have anything to do with how Hawaiian they are, how dark their skin is, things like that. You could see the most Hawaiian looking person with the most Hawaiian name, and they have just completely disconnected from their culture and their identity because it's kind of what had to happen to survive here. So I think it's really awesome that my kids can be so knowledgeable, especially my 3-year-old, on the Hawaiian names for things, how you eat things, what they are, how you grow them, because he's very hands-on in the garden. Like, he wants to help plant everything. Like, you ask him to go grab that pick and he'll go pick the cane grass and he knows how. And at first it was scary because he's so small, but he's really very helpful. He knows how to use all the tools. And I love that. I mean, he still watches his iPad. We don't own a TV, but we have an iPad and everyone has cell phone. Well, not him, but the adults. But I think it's awesome that, like, my kids want to go outside. Like, I have to lock them in the house because they want to be outside. Like, that's where they want to be. They want to be climbing trees. They want to be chasing the chickens and the cats and playing in the mud and playing in the dirt. I don't know why they love to rub dirt on each other, but they do. So I think being outside, that they get to experience that different side of the world and build their immunity because they eat the dirt as well, among other things that they find out.
But when it comes to the school system and education, what is it like in terms of incorporating Hawaiian culture into the education system? Or is that something that still
Yeah,
needs?
I've considered homeschooling. Their father did graduate from Kamehameha. Um, so that is a school that was set up by the Queen for Hawaiian children. You can get scholarships. It is a private school on the pricier side. They do get a really good education going there. That's something that we've considered. There's also some other Hawaiian immersion schools where they only speak Olelo Hawaii. So that's something that we also considered. With that, it is a bigger commitment because the parent do have to take Hawaiian language classes because that you need to be able to speak Hawaiian at home as well as in school. They only speak Hawaiian to them. So that's another thing that we've really thought about. Um, I mean, not to say public school is kind of just everywhere. I feel like these days, in my personal opinion, um, I've considered homeschooling just because, yeah, my son definitely needs to be stimulated or he is just like insane. Um, but there is a school in Eagle Valley, which is somewhere we like to go by the river and go swimming a lot that I think he would do well in, because it is Hawaiian immersion, because it is right by the water, and some of the activities that they do, we've looked into it. It looks really good. So I think we're either gonna stick him there or I may homeschool. But we want to stick him in school, opposed to me homeschooling, I think. It may be a little bit hard with my children being so small and so close together. Like they just, I feel like would not school with me at home, if that makes
Yeah, for
sense.
sure. I am not a homeschooler, so I'm not saying that I could do it. I was just curious about how Hawaiian culture gets incorporated into education. But yeah, the immersion programs sound amazing. I know around here there are French language schools where the parents definitely have to be French if you want to enroll your child, because everything is in the parent teacher night, all the communication, everything. So you have to be, it would be their first language, right? Like to speak in the language of the school and not the other way around.
Plus, it seems extra harsh to wedge your kids into a cinder block public school if they're used to being able to see the ocean from the front porch and run around and pick mangoes off the trees or whatever other tropical paradise Brady Bunch situation you have going on over there. That then you'd be like, go sit in a desk. I don't care that you're 5. Go inside. Like, that sounds horrible. Yeah, that sounds mean. I had something else. I don't know what it was. Gone now. So what are some of your biggest parenting struggles, whether it's farm related or general? Am I right in thinking that there are not venomous snakes in Hawaii?
Yeah. So, gosh, I could.
So that feels like that takes the first level off that right
Yes,
there. Like,
I couldn't live where you ladies are. I'm sorry, I couldn't do it. I don't like reptiles. We really just have like geckos and that's it. And they're good because they eat the termites and the cockroaches that we have here in Hawaii. Um, yes, we do not have snakes, which I love because, like I said, just thinking about snakes gives me chicken skin. Yeah, I'm not a fan of those. We do not have snakes. We don't really have natural predators. The most scariest thing that you need to think about is wild pigs. We have had some in the yard recently, but that's really it. Or where we are out here, there is. I've heard them before too. So I believe that it's true, but there's supposedly a pack of wild dogs, out here. I've heard them at night, haven't seen them, but that just happens from like hunting dogs that get left behind in the mountain and then they kind of just like become feral. Because where we are is, we're 12 minutes from town, but it's very rural where we are. There's feral cats, but that's really it. There's mongooses. They really don't come towards you. They're not like, if you were to like, if one was sleeping and my kid grabbed it, probably would attack my child, but they're very not friendly. Like they won't come to you kind of thing. So yeah, there's not really any natural predators. We don't have like predatory birds or anything like that. I've heard stories of like, oh, a hawk snatched up a small child. No, we don't have hawks, eagles, things like that. All of the native wildlife here is very not scary or dangerous or anything like that. We don't have bears, anything like that. Yeah, no mountain lions.
see now, Raven, I'm going to stop you right there because same as the natural disasters, like we have snakes, we have a few venomous snakes, we do have timber rattlers up here. Not many. I've never seen one. Wild hogs? Like, I would lose my shit if wild pigs showed up in my yard. Pigs are fucking nasty. They're horrible. I have been around black bears before that I have surprised that I would be less worried about than wild hogs. So when you're all like, oh, we don't have any snakes, snakes are scary. But wild hogs, like, I don't know. Hawaii is off my list now. To hell with wild hogs. No way, dude. Pigs will eat you. Pigs will eat all of you.
They will, but they'll let you sit dead for a while first. They like the dead meat.
Oh, gross.
Okay, we're going
Gross.
like true crime
Yeah,
into
fair
it
enough.
in this podcast now.
Now,
But-
I'm sure that only a few of these stories are true, but every community around here has a story about somebody who murdered someone and fed them to the hogs. And, the one around here, I do believe, they found the dentures and, like, part of a hip implant. And that's all they ever found. So,
Do you want to loop back to the original question?
I believe it. I love true crime, but also I know someone that has a pig farm, and I went to school with their children, and that was something that one of the boys told people, "Oh, you better watch out because we have a pig farm, if you go missing." So I believe it. I believe it.
okay, sorry, Arlene. Our little true crime crossover. Wild pigs.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
Oh, yeah, so what the parenting struggles outside of getting your kids not to pee on stuff and not letting them be eaten by wild hogs or mongoose. Is mongoose even the correct plural of mongoose? Is it mongooses? I don't know. We'll find out later. Aren't you glad, Arlene, that we took a whole month off so that I can derail things this quickly when we come back? Okay, but Raven, seriously, parenting struggles. Go for it.
I guess parenting struggles is just parenting different than our parents parented. I feel like my other half struggles with that a little bit more. Neither one of us really come from the greatest background. Unfortunately, I feel like that's a huge theme with Indigenous people. We both, we're different cultures. We're both still Indigenous. But there's just a really heavy undertone of addiction and some abuse and things like that. Unfortunately, I mean, I think you go far enough back in any person's culture that's there. I feel like it's just a little bit more highlighted in Indigenous cultures. So that's a struggle trying to not let childhood things affect our parenting now, and also trying to parent different than the way we were parented. That's a big struggle. Like, my children drive me crazy. Oh my gosh. And my oldest says all the most inappropriate things at all the most inappropriate times. And, but I know he's heard it come out of someone's mouth. Was it my mouth? Was it the father's? Was it the grandpa's? Probably was the grandpa's, but um, that's something that's really, really hard. I feel like, and just feeling like, because I don't have like a lot of guidance and support, like, am I doing it right? Am I doing this the right way? Am I ruining my child? I don't know if everyone feels that way. But that seems to be a big struggle, like trying to do, yeah, trying to do like the whole gentle parenting thing is really hard when you don't have gentle children. So that's a huge struggle. Also, like, having boys, I feel like is hard because, yeah, they're boys and I'm not a boy. And my son asks me why I'm not a boy all the time, and having to explain that to him. And then, yeah, trying to like juggle it two different cultural aspects to it. My other half is Native Hawaiian. So here in Hawaii, everyone's mixed. Called the melting pot of the Pacific. Everyone's mixed. But my other half is Hawaiian, Portuguese, Japanese. So, and I'm Spanish, Native American, Siberian, English mix. So I'm very mixed as well. We just have different ways of doing things, and sometimes it clashes. Also have different tastes. Well, we like some of the same foods, but also our like Indigenous foods to each other are different. So trying to kind of blend that all out. And then, of course, my children, one is very white looking and one is very brown. And, like, trying to answer that, my oldest will ask, like, why do I have different color skin? Why do I have different color hair? Like, trying to, like, explain these things to him in a way that makes sense. And also, it makes me feel bad because I don't want to hurt his feelings and be like, yeah, mommy has darker hair than you, but mommy has lighter skin like you. But why did daddy and brother have darker hair and darker skin? Things like that I feel like are a challenge with my children.
Do you struggle as well with generational preferences about what it is more ideal for your children to look like?
Yeah, I would say, without talking too badly about anyone, yeah, that it's definitely a generational preference. But even with like my grandma has a certain way of doing things that I'm just like, oh, that's so weird. Why? No. Being a millennial, I'm like, no, that's not how we're doing stuff around here. She's pretty good though, but yeah, there's definitely a generational preference on certain things. Like, why would you buy everything organic? Well, I don't want to feed my children extra chemicals when there's chemicals everywhere. Or why, you know, with my youngest and even with my oldest when he was younger, like I'm a beige mom, I guess you could say, like wanting to do more earth tone, had to like come out of my shell because my children love Spider-Man. Blue and red everywhere. As you can see the wall back here, it's like very like, boho. Our whole house is like terracotta colored. A lot of stuff in their room is, but yeah, they love Spider-Man. There's Spider-Man everywhere. Spider-Man underwear, pajamas. There's a Spider-Man hat there. Figurines, everything, blankets, pillows. They love them some Spider-Man. So I don't wanna be as controlling as my mother was about stuff, but at the same time, I'm like, "Hey, well, doesn't this color look better?" "Nope, I wanna wear orange and purple today." I'm like, "Okay, cool. You put that on." So, it's hard when you have such a strong sense of how you think things should be, and children don't. They have their own plans going on, how they don't care. Like, the other day, I'm like, "Oh, you're gonna wear a long sleeve shirt? It's gonna be hot." And my son's like, "So, I wanna wear this shirt." And I'm like, "Are you sure you wanna I mean, we are going to Costco, it'll be cold in Costco, but it's gonna be hot before we get to Costco. So, are you sure you wanna wear long sleeves?" And then my son, finally talked him out of it. I'm like, "We can bring a jacket, but I don't think that you wanna wear long sleeves and long pants. I don't think it's gonna feel good." Not in the middle of the afternoon at 3 PM.
I think I liked what you said about being a gentle parent because we can, even when we're in our best moments and are channeling that gentle parent mentality, you're right. The response that we get is not gentle. Like they're not gentle back to us because we are being a gentle parent. So that just triggers all of those things, right? Where you're like, but I'm doing the work here to be loving and compassionate and
I literally just wrote it down
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
See, because yes, Raven, yes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, because the response we get to gentle parenting is not gentleness in return, and that is can be really triggering for sure.
Yeah, it's really hard to feel good about. I know for myself at least, it can be so tempting to slide back into generational patterns of I will scare you / force you into behaving because how dare you fucking throw something at my head when I'm being all, let's talk about our feelings, and then my kid just wings a rock at me and I'm like, well, you little shit. Like, when I said express your feelings, I didn't mean like that.
Yeah, I didn't
Like,
mean these ones.
yeah, not those feelings, not this much. Like, how about if we limit some of the feelings, which is, of course, entirely the
Yeah.
point.
You know what I keep reminding myself because both of my children have very strong personalities? Keep reminding myself these are such good qualities for adults, not for toddlers, not when you're parenting toddlers, but they're both very strong-willed, both very independent, go-getters. Like my children can't reach something, even my 1-year-old will move furniture to reach it. Like they're very, very intelligent. Ugh, they're just so hard to parent sometimes.
I will say I do have the benefit of I've got a big stretch in my family. My oldest is 17 and my youngest is 8. So I've got the benefit of like a bit of hindsight at this point because my 17-year-old just went off to school. And knowing how challenging she was as a toddler, I can say that it does, in her case, I mean, obviously not in every case. I mean, the others could still end up in prison, who knows? But in her case, it's it's coming true. Like I see the qualities that were so hard to manage when she was little, and I can see her managing her own life now in ways that like what as a 17-year-old I couldn't do. Like the independence and the fierceness and the knowing who she is, like that those are qualities that probably we, and maybe it was partly that we were raised and maybe just the way, things were at the time that we buried some of those things. But our kids are going to do amazing things. So yeah, as hard as it is now, I think we just have to power through, and and let them run the world.
Yeah. And I don't want to like diminish that light within my children. I feel like it's so easy to do that. But yeah, my oldest is not the type of child that if you yell at him or spank him, he's gonna listen. Like he's not gonna comply. Like he'll do the complete opposite. Like he's not, and he's always been that way. Like you can't scare him into doing something. Like he will literally do the complete opposite of what you want him to do. So he, makes it even harder with me sometimes.
I can say, Raven, even as my first one is approaching 7, and both of my kids have big personalities like that too, we're already starting to see the benefit of really encouraging that strength of character in our kids, and trying to force myself to reframe it as things like strength of character and good leadership skills instead of strong-willed, bossy pain in the ass. Because she is very compassionate, and she is a very good friend, and she is very helpful, and she's very tenacious. And all of those things can be really, really hard as the parent, but they're making them better people.
Oh yeah, if my son were to like accidentally do something, he'll apologize. If he did it on purpose and you ask him to apologize, he won't apologize. He's not sorry. He did it on purpose.
Yeah, I did that for a reason.
I've learned to have to respect that. Like, okay, yeah, he's not sorry. He's right. You shouldn't say sorry if you're not sorry. You shouldn't lie about it and fake it. But it is frustrating coming from a parent's point of view. Like, just apologize. No, I'm not sorry. I did it on purpose.
Well, I assume it's not me, and it sounds like maybe your family background is similar to mine in a lot of ways, that it's so hard not to say, do you know what would have happened to me if I had done that at your age? You know, aren't you grateful that I didn't just smack you one for whatever you did? Because they're not, and they shouldn't be, and it is right and proper that they should have no idea about how much of a pain in the ass they're being, because that's why we're adults. And, we chose to make these people, so we chose to deal with them being pains in the ass. And with mothers like us, we should have expected them to be like this. So
I was always told I would have a daughter like me, but I have a son.
All right, so we ask all of our guests, if you were going to dominate a category at the county fair, what would it be? And categories can be real or made up to ensure that you win.
It's a good question. I mean, I want to say agriculture. I don't know that I would dominate that, though. Probably if there was like a culinary aspect to it, I feel like I would dominate that. I actually went to culinary school, and cooking is really my actual passion. I started cooking when I was 4 because, like my son, I was very strong-willed and I really wanted to cook. So I'd have to say if there was like a culinary aspect to it, that's probably what I would dominate. Because I love cooking. It's always just come very, very natural, and it's something that just almost is therapeutic for me when I'm cooking, especially if I'm cooking for someone that I love and I'm cooking something that I love. Then yeah, it's very therapeutic. It feels very healing for me to do that.
That's perfect. We'll be your judges, just so we get to taste it. So we'll go ahead and move into our cussing and discussing segment. We've registered for an online platform called SpeakPipe, where listeners can leave their cussing and discussing, and we'll play them on the show. So go to the show notes, and there's a link there, or you can send us an email and we'll read it out if you send one in to us. So Katie, what are you cussing or discussing this week?
Well, Arlene, none of our listeners obviously can see this, but I am holding up yet another not quite completed crochet project. And I have fallen real hard into buying yarn, because I like to buy yarn because it's fun and it's pretty, and I like to think of all the things I can make out of it. And I like to plan projects, and I like to start projects.
I have a feeling I know where this is going.
The problem is that I have a lot of 70% finished projects. I think Arlene is probably the only non-family recipient of an actual finished project at this point. Yeah, Arlene, you should feel special.
When I received my project, I should take a picture of it and post it on social media someday. When I received it, I thought, well, I know Katie is always crocheting when we're online, so she must give these out to everybody. No. I did not know I was so special.
No. I think my in-laws were a little...
But there's some 70% lying around the house.
A few. Yes, a few. I asked in a crochet group the other day how many projects one could have on the hook before it got weird, and I was assured that anything less than 20 was still acceptable. And I think I'm down to
Okay. So you have to buy yarn and more crochet hooks so that you have enough.
Well, you just have to start things at different scales so that you can use different crochet hooks. I think I'm down to like 4 things on the hook currently. But
Well, that's pretty good.
if anyone needs me, I'll be finishing this stupid Afghan. Anyway.
I'm sure it'll be beautiful someday when it's done.
Raven, what do you have to cuss and discuss?
Oh, gosh. My closet. It's an ongoing battle. I'm one of those people that may or may not have about 3 laundry hampers full of clean clothes, but nowhere to put them. And a desire to buy more clothing every time I see it.
Yes, I have that desire all the time.
But do you ever actually leave the farm to wear any of it?
I mean,
or are you like so many of us now that you have all this nice clothing that you never wear because you don't go anywhere?
Yes and no. I feel like for me, I'm like, what if an occasion comes up where I need the satin dress? Does it come up maybe once every 5 years, but I don't want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I did donate a lot of my clothes recently, like 3 trash bags full of clothes, so a lot of clothes, and I still have more, and it still doesn't all fit in the drawers in the closet, and the closet's like 90% mine. There's like 10% that's Hanoa's, and like he has his own drawers too. But yeah, it's just a struggle to get it put away because there's nowhere to put it. But I don't want to get rid of it. But I love it. But I'm probably not going to wear all of it. Some of that I'll probably never wear. You know, I have a lot of those pieces of, well, if I lose 100 pounds one day, then this will fit, so I can't get rid of it.
Yeah, I've got a whole line of aspirational clothes where it's like, well, that was a really nice dress I only wore once, so if I ever get back to that size again, then I will want it, whether or not it ever gets worn again is probably we probably know the answer to that. But yeah, the aspirational clothes. Plus, maybe you don't have as much seasonality, but then we've also got the winter versus summer versus like this shoulder season where, you know, 1 week it could be swelter, or one day it can be sweltering, and then the next day it's freezing again. So you have to take it all out.
It definitely gets colder during the winter here at night, but I already have this love for like loungewear. I don't know
Available
why.
at any moment.
Way too much loungewear, way too many sweatshirts, pullovers, hoodies. Yes, and you know it's bulky too, so it takes up a good portion of my closet that I need for maybe to wear like 10 times out of the whole year.
For sure.
I find too that I think part of my issue is that in my head, if I don't wear something, it must be because I don't own it and not simply because I work from home and I don't go anywhere. So, you know, I say, well, I must need to buy jeans because I never wear jeans, where really it's that I have a whole drawer full of them. I just don't wear them because why would I willingly wear them if I'm going to sit in my office at home all day? And I mean, I can do chores in leggings just as easily as I can in jeans.
I've been hearing rooster noises during the interview. Is that your rooster, Katie, or is that yours, Raven?
I think that's Raven's.
There's some in the background.
Oh, okay, that's cool. I just wasn't sure which farm they were coming from.
I tune them out. I don't even notice, honestly. Oh, yeah, no, that's my rooster.
Yeah.
Going off. One of them.
Yeah, just for the listeners so they know where the rooster's coming from. Not my house.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Hawaii, we have a lot of wild chickens everywhere you go.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll see people taking pictures of them, like, in the Walmart parking lot. And we're like, ew, what are you doing? Like, they're everywhere. Like, we have some legit, like, chickens, you know, that we have in our yard. And then some of them are mixed in with the wild ones that just came out of the bushes. And it just is what it is. They do their thing.
So, Arlene, what do you have to cuss and discuss today?
So I'm cussing and discussing today as a new university parent. And I love that we have texting now because it's so easy to be able to talk to my kid whenever I want. But also like trying to be chill. Like she's at this point when we're recording, like about a week and a half into living away from home for the first time. and like trying not to text too much to be like pretend that I'm chill, but also wanting to be like every 10 minutes, like, what are you doing now? What are you doing now? Are you doing okay? Are you having fun? But I'm just like trying to like save it up, not ask too many questions, still be interested, and then not ask too often to FaceTime because I still want to see your face. So just, adjusting to the new normal. I don't know how well I'm doing, but this is where we're at.
So, Arlene, does it feel like being back to being like 16 and starting dating and being like, don't call too often, but also have something witty to say, but also be
exactly.
chill?
Yeah, be chill. Yeah, be chill, but you want to be supportive and make sure that they know that you're always there and you're available should they ever want to talk, but not like desperate. Yes. Yeah, it's like a dating relationship. That's what parenting teens is like. Just like try and be cool. Maybe they'll want to hang. But if they don't, that's okay too. No big deal.
I think I'm really glad that I came through that age before cell phones and texting and such were a thing. Because as hard as it was for me to be, I mean, for all of you who know how not chill I am at 42, imagine what I was like at 16.
You were not chill?
Okay, now imagine what I would have been like if I'd been able to text at 16.
Look out, everybody.
I'm sure I was horrifying enough. I'm horrifying enough now. But yes, I'm very glad that it was harder to play. It was easier to play hard to get.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there wasn't evidence of all the things we did. Yeah, playing. Yeah.
And none of it's on Facebook. Thank God for that.
That's right. So thank you so much, Raven, for joining us today on the podcast and for getting up so early for us. It was great to meet you and talk to you. If listeners want to follow you online, where should they find you?
Right now I'm really just on Instagram, so it's Puukea underscore. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. Underscore farms at Instagram. I can't even think. I'm so tired. And Puukea is exactly how it sounds. Puukea. And then there's no akina or apostrophe in between the U's on my Instagram page. And then if you wanted to support Maui Hub, they don't ship anything, but if you are on vacation in Maui and so inclined to plan ahead, I give you props. And if you wanted to order food from Maui Hub, you could find me on there. If you wanted to try some different indigenous local foods to Hawaii, I would check me out on there because we have some different stuff on there. Gmail is puukeafarms@gmail.com. And that's really it at the moment. I have a YouTube. I'm not active on there, but pretty much just Instagram right now.
That's perfect. Thank you. And we'll definitely include that and some of the other resources that you shared with us earlier in the episode. We'll put those in the show notes. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, Raven.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you for joining us on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy this show, we encourage you to support us by becoming a patron. Go to www.patreon.com/barnyardlanguage to make a small monthly donation to help cover the costs of making this show.
Please rate and review the podcast and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as Barnyard Language, and on Twitter we are Barnyard Pod. If you want to connect with other farming families, you can join our private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We are always in search of guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, please get in touch. We are a proud member of the Positively Farming Media Podcast Network.